Hey guys, welcome to the 2 a.m. pipe on the patio. Smoking my old Falcon straight with some Sam Gawith 1792 Flake. This is some great tobacco. It comes in these beautiful flakes. So I took one of those and I just folded it up. Took about 2/3 of a flake, folded it up, and stuffed it in this pipe. And I love doing the fold stuff and twist with flakes if they're good flakes, because they burn a lot slower and a lot cooler. They can be a little hard to light sometimes. I usually rub out a little bit for the top of the bowl just to get it going, or rough up the top with a tamper of some sort, and I'll just kind of rub on the top of it to loosen up some of the top, because it looks like a cigar in there once you folded, stuffed, and twist, and you stuff it and you get it in there. Looks like the end of a cigar. So I'll kind of rough it up a little bit just to help it light. That's what I did on this one. And that's working pretty good. It's a beautiful evening. I'm sure you can hear the cicadas and the frogs and the katydids. I'm going to move this a little closer here so you can see all my wrinkles and how pretty I am. I texted with Charlie Knott today. Charlie could use some prayers. Charlie's having a rough go. So if you're the praying sort, say a prayer for Charlie Knott. I also had a nice text conversation with Bearded Welshman. We had a nice conversation this morning. We talk every once in a while, or text every once in a while. And we'll have nice long texts back and forth going. I don't hear so good, so it's hard for me to talk on the phone. And I know some guys don't like to text, they like to talk on the phone, so it's tough sometimes. But too many years playing in bands. This ear's gone. I can't hear out of this ear. I usually wear a hearing aid in this ear because it's just shot. It's actually not from noise though, because I can hear highs. I can't hear lows in this ear. It's from I had a really bad ear infection. Jacked up my ear. I can still hear fairly decent out of this ear. Not the best. I need probably hearing aids in both ears at this point, so I'll be looking into that. It's a beautiful evening. Had some thunder and lightning today, some rain. Most of the thunder and lightning was out over the mountains, but you could hear it and see it every once in a while. We got some rain here. And of course the cicadas and the frogs and everything are going crazy, and I'm loving that. So I talked to two of my cousins this weekend who I hadn't talked to in quite a while. My cousin David, who I hadn't talked to since my mom passed away. He came to my mom's funeral. And Joe, his brother, I hadn't talked to him since his mom passed away, and I went to her funeral. Actually, I took my mom up to Montana. Their mom and dad lived in Montana. And my Aunt Lorraine had a stroke, and my mom wanted to go see her, say her goodbyes, and so I flew with my mom up to Montana. We were there when she passed and got to say our goodbyes. When that was the last time I saw Joe. Gosh, it's got to be close to 10 years now, something like that, or more. And those two guys are two of the funniest human beings you will ever meet in your life. David has this super dry sense of humor. Which I absolutely love. And Joe is just a comedian. He's just a flat out comedian. I mean, he'll do anything for the laugh. Even if it means he's going to get beat for it. He used to get in trouble all the time. And my Aunt Lorraine and Uncle Les had a paddle they would use for spanking the kids. Joe would always write fictitious scripture quotes on paddle, like "Thou shalt not beat thy child," Joe chapter 1 verse 5 and 6 or something like that, which made them even madder when he'd give them the paddle and because you need to read the scriptures on there. Just made them even madder. That guy he would do anything for the laugh and anything on a dare, which got him into a lot of trouble. But they lived on a farm up in Vacaville, California, outside of Dixon and Davis. They had this neat little farm. farm ranch kind of a thing where we had cattle and some horses and turkeys, a bunch of rabbits. So we'd have dinners. My grandma and my grandpa Flanigan would come up for dinner. Their grandma and grandpa Flanigan too. My mom's dad and his wife. And they'd cook rabbit. They'd have rabbit, which was really good. It was really good. But we'd have the rabbits. I'd have the rabbits on a plate. And one of the rules of the family rules was when you have guests there, you never talk about the rabbits or whatever you're eating being from the farm, you know, because some people just didn't like that for some reason. That's just one of the rules they had, was you didn't talk about it. So they're passing around the rabbit, the platter of rabbit. There's 7 of us there, I guess. Eight of us. Maybe 9. Trying to think of who all was there that day. My cousin Kathy and her husband, Joe, David, Lori, Auntie Lorraine, Uncle Les, and Grandma and Grandpa Flanigan. And so David took a piece of the rabbit. Joe goes, "Hey, I think that's Fluffy. I think you got Fluffy." He was giving names to the rabbits that people were taking and eating. He was naming them. "Hey, you got Fluffy. Hey, you got Cottontail over there. Johnny, you got Thumper." And my aunt and uncle got so mad at him. Oh, they got furious with him. I was rolling. I was just, and they'd get mad at me for laughing because it just egged him on, you know. "Johnny, quit laughing at him. You're just egging him on." And I go, "It's hilarious. He's hilarious." And my grandpa, he'd start laughing because I was laughing. Oh. Anyway, it was good talking to those guys. And Joe lives in Georgia. He's been in Georgia for 40 years now. He was in the Army, and when he got out of the Army, he stayed in Georgia. And David lives in California, Northern California. It was just so fun talking to those guys and just laughing. And David and I got talking about Grandpa Flanigan. And I've done videos on my Grandpa Flanigan, talk about it, and what a soft-spoken. He was originally from West Virginia, and he was a coal miner. Got out of the coal mines, and they moved to Portland, and they moved down to Santa Clara, which is near Stanford, where Stanford is, real close to Stanford University. It's Silicon Valley. And he went to work for Standard Oil. And but Dave and I were talking about it, and we were talking about how he didn't say much. You know, he wasn't a man who did a lot of talking. But when he did talk, when he had something to say, it was worth listening to. and you were going to learn something. He was a very well-read man. Uh, knew his history. I remember going and seeing when I was 14 years old. I went up, stayed with my grandpa for a month, or not a month, but a couple of weeks. I went up there and stayed with him, and I had just had some hernia surgery on my stomach, and so I went up, stayed with him, and we went and saw Fiddler on the Roof. And I knew nothing of the history of what that movie, entailed. And after the movie was over, we were driving home, and he started telling me all about, what was going on during that movie, and the Russian Revolution, and just telling me the whole story, but the backstory of the times where that movie was set in, and it was just fascinating to me. And I just remembered thinking, man, Grandpa's just so smart, man. He knows all this history stuff, and I loved history. I've always loved history. Mostly American history is what I loved the most, but any history was fascinating to me, especially when somebody was explaining something to me. Like after seeing that movie, and he was explaining the stuff that was going on, and the czar, and everything that, and but my grandpa he was a very quiet, soft-spoken man, and he's the reason I smoke a pipe. He smoked a pipe, and I never, in all my years, he passed in 1985. But I never once heard him raise his voice to anybody, ever. He was a very gentle, soft-spoken man. And David and I were talking about that, about how, he didn't say much, but when he felt there was something he needed to say or he wanted to say, it was worth listening to, because you were going to learn something. He was going to school you. He was going to teach you something. And David was talking about some books that Grandpa had given him, had left to him, and they were classic literature books, and David went to college, and Grandpa was very instrumental in David going to college. I don't know if Joe went to college or not. I think Joe just went into the Army. But my cousin Lori and David, and I think Kathy, they all went to college. I never went to college. I was working soon as I was working while I was in high school, and went to work right after high school, and then I started playing music, and I was too busy drinking and carousing and to go to college. It's one of my great regrets. But Grandpa was just a very, he was self-taught smart. You know, that kind of a guy who just read. He read, and he was a voracious reader. But David was telling me that in some of those books that he has, his thumbprint, you can see his thumbprints in it in coal dust from when he was working in the coal mines. We got talking about my Uncle Les, who was in the Army. And he was in Japan during World War II. And he was part of the occupying force after World War II. And he said that after the war was over, a lot of the Japanese people would come up to him, the Japanese men, and they would say, "Your hair is so curly. How do you get your hair so curly?" And he would tell them, "You go to the drugstore and you get some peroxide, and you pour that on your hair, and you leave it on there for, a good half hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and your hair will get real curly." All that does is bleach your hair. But I guess that was something and I didn't know for sure if that was true or not, so I was talking to David about it. He goes, "Oh yeah, that was true." He goes, "My dad would tell stories a lot, and if it wasn't true, he'd say, 'You realize I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but that one was true. That story was true.'" Different times, different times. And he had a .9mm Luger that he had brought back from the war. He was a paratrooper. And he had taken that off of a German soldier. I remember him showing me that back in I guess it was the early 80s. He brought that out and showed it to me one time. And I think he wound up selling that or something. Nobody has it. I think because Joe kept getting it, and they were afraid he was going to cause trouble with it or something. So they wound up getting rid of it. But David has a sake cups, some sake cups that a Japanese gentleman had sent to his dad. And after the war. But anyway, we had some good. It was a good talk. I had a lot of fun talking with him and catching up. And so I'm thinking I'm gonna go out and I was supposed to go out and see my Uncle David. And what I think I'm gonna do is maybe go out and see if my cousin David will pick me up at the airport. And he said I could, come out and stay with him. And so I may stay a couple days with him, see if maybe he'll take me to my Uncle David's. And I could just, go to dinner, go to lunch or breakfast or something with my Uncle David. And get to see him that way without staying with him. And then I'll go to San Francisco, get a hotel over there for 3 days or something and just stay in the city. Maybe go to a Giants game. They're going to be home for part of the time that I'm there, and I've never been to a Giants game in San Francisco. So I may do that. I may just get a ticket to the Giants game one night, go to the Giants game, and then that's always been on my bucket list. See the Giants at home. I always saw them in San Diego. My dad would take me to the Giants games when they'd play the Padres. And I got to see Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and Juan Marichal and Gaylord Perry when he was with the Giants. Tito Fuentes, Dick Dietz, Ken Henderson, all those guys were. Ed Goodson was my favorite player of all time. He was a third baseman for the Giants. Nobody even knows who he is, but he was my favorite player as a kid. I loved Ed Goodson. I played third base. He was a third baseman, and I loved Ed Goodson. But anyway, so hopefully I'll get to go see my Uncle David and maybe my Uncle Neil. But so I've been doing a lot of catching up with family members and friends and stuff this week. It's just been a lot of I can't wait to see David. David's just hilarious. Funny guy. Holy smokes, 30 minutes. Jiminy Cricket. Well, that's it. I'm stopping here. Sorry this was so long. I got yammering on. I will catch you guys later. Have a good one. God bless.